and welcome to the very first episode of Coffee and Grace. Oh my God, I cannot believe we are here. I can't believe you're here. In fact, I'm sorry for those who are probably only listening on audio because I'm probably blowing out your eardrums because I'm so freaking excited because this has been a journey to get here and has been quite the vision. And so I could pinch myself. I have been dreaming about having this conversation with you for so long in this kind of magnitude, in a worldwide way with worldwide people, and here we are. And so thank you for joining. At this point, I should probably stop assuming that all of you are already friends, although you probably clearly are friends, but we've got some new friends out there. And so I'm gonna take a moment to introduce myself. I am Culture Strategist and Grace Warrior Dee Kendrix. Also, your brand new host for your now new weekly destination for thoughtful connections and brave conversations. Welcome to the coffee table, people. Listen, I'm sure you've got questions. If I'm anything like you, or you're anything like me, should I say, you're probably trying to say, okay, we've been geared up, you've dropped out the teasers, and what is Coffee and Grace? Why is this now going to be our weekly destination? And if you're a brand new friend, you're probably also like, girl, I'm ready. I'm looped in to connect with you on a weekly basis, but who are you? What's your story? Who is your people? And so I've got answers for you. I hope that I can get to all of them during the time we have today. In fact, I know I'm not going to get to all of them because we don't have that much time. But I promise you that I'll get to most of those answers for sure. And the reason that I'm not going to get to all of them is because I want you to start a journey with us. This is not about a transaction between us today or once a month or even once a week. I'll put it this way. Do you have anyone in your life who you absolutely adore that you got to know everything about overnight? But do you have anyone in your life who you absolutely adore, who you've known for years and you still keep learning new things about, but yet you keep tuning into their lively episode, whether it's every day because it's a significant other or a family member, or weekly because it's a girlfriend, or anyone else? Exactly. Nothing about this dynamic and this relationship will happen overnight, and it's not meant to be. You are in for quite a ride and quite a journey. So I want to definitely, though, make sure that I give you a little bit of background and at least introduce you to Coffee and Grace. And so I'll start by sharing a bit of a story. Coffee and Grace was created, I think in June of 2015 or 16. I think it was 2016. Don't crucify me about not knowing the date. And it started with myself and 7 women in my small Brady Street, Milwaukee apartment. And no, Coffee and Grace doesn't have 7 founders. These 7 women just happened to be the volunteers for what I would call a social experiment. And that social experiment was really my way of starting to become really curious about culture and humanity and how we were wired as people. And as a culture strategist, I wanted to try a few things out, and I wanted to try it out with my network. And eventually it became more than just about women, but for those of you who are in research, you totally get why I wanted to sequester it to one gender at first. And of course it was the gender I was most comfortable with. And what I will tell you is that all those ladies knew was that they were invited to a coffee, and coffee in the sense of social and sacred community. And all they were promised was sacred community and dialogue. Because I wanted to really determine a couple of things. I was curious about a few things. Number one, I was curious about the fact if I invited a group of human beings to come to a place where they didn't know anyone. In fact, they were really just coming without what I like to call uniform. And I call uniform what we have to dress up as every day. And so it's all of the titles. your mom, whether you're a dad, whether you're a husband or a wife, whether you're the doctor, whether you're the VP, whether you're CEO, all of those to me are what I like to call uniforms. I don't like to call them costumes because I believe that most of us are operating with an intent to be authentic. But every time we put on a uniform and a title, for a bunch of different reasons, especially in a space of if you're dealing with people of culture or anyone who is in a sub-demographic, if you will, when we put on those titles and uniforms, it's also what I would like to call a layer of armor. And when the layers of armor are there, we begin to disappear and we pretend to protect ourselves. And so what I wanted to make sure was, what I was curious about, should I say, is if I invited folks to come only as themselves, purely based on value exchange and not likability or familiarity, number one, would they show up? Number two, would they show up? Meaning, would they be able to leave that uniform, so to speak, at home? Number three, what I wanted to know was if they came and if they showed up, how would the space then give back to them? Would it immediately create the sense of belonging or connection, or would it take some time? Because I should also add that these were all strangers, and that was part of the experiment, that no one could know each other in anything closer than, or should I say less than, 2 degrees of separation. And that's a hard task in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for 7 women to not know at least 3 people who knew the other one intimately. And so, but somehow we figured it out. And so would they need more time? But last but not least, I also wanted to know, let's just say all of those things happened. Let's just say that sacred conversation would take place. Would it be a transactional kind of once in a lifetime moment that would change us and be as a deposit to kind of carry us forward? Or would it be a bit deeper than that? Would it be, again, a bit of a journey that created branches of connection? And what I will tell you, folks, is it was check, 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 check to all those things. I will tell you without, really breaching any level of discretion that we all committed to in that session or the sessions thereafter, I will tell you that it changed lives. I will tell you that a group of strangers were able to tell each other stories that they had never told another human being. That wives confessed to husband challenges and vice versa. Husband confessed to wife challenges and mothers and vice versa. And there was a number of things that happened, but most importantly, there was some healing that happened, and then friendships grew. And what I realized when I took a step back and said, how did this happen? Why did it happen? What I realized was that when we took the risk of showing up as humans solely based on the intention of connecting through difference, because every single one of those people had a number of things that made them very different. In fact, there were people who vehemently had disagreement about politics and religion. But you know what? Not knowing those things in advance had people show up a bit differently. And because we came to this space that way, what it gifted us was grace. What it gifted us with relationships that I will tell you make my heart smile, because when I look out today, they're still connected. What it told me was, if we intentionally decided to connect as humans based on the cultural differences that society seeks to separate us, that what we would find is the very opposite. What we would find is wholeness. What we would find is connectivity. What we would find is commonality. And what I found was being the same as everybody else was pretty damn boring. And it started me on a rampage in life for both grace, because it's our guardrail, But it also made me start on this like mission for difference and meeting a ton of different people. And I said to myself, how do I not just keep this in my friend circle? How do I take this out of kind of these sacred coffee table sessions? And out of that, the Coffee and Grace show was born. And so, friends, that is what Coffee and Grace is all about. The Coffee and Grace zone is where we will come and have thoughtful connections about a myriad of topics. It is also where we will come and have brave conversations. But most importantly, it is where at my coffee table, every single person is welcome. We've got 3 rules that will be our mantra or tenet or whatever we want to call them for the duration of our lifelong journey together. And that is number 1, that no matter what we say and how we say it and who says it, that we have to do it in a bold way, in an authentic way, and in a gracious way. So you're probably saying, dang girl, that is deep stuff. It's deep. And I got to tell you, every week won't be so philosophical and so deep. We are going to laugh together. We're going to cry together. We're going to have times where we want to process. We're going to talk about current events. You name it. There's no topic off the coffee table. But I also can imagine for those of you who are meeting me for the first time, you've got some questions about where I come from. Like, what's my background? Why? How did I even get here? Why do I even care this much about adding value and connecting human beings? And I will tell you once again that I can't answer that in this hour. But what I will do is make sure that I tell you a little bit about myself. And so I'm going to do a rapid fire introduction, if you will. And if you tune in every week, you will learn that number 1, I'm an open book. Number 2, every single person in my life is phenomenal and hilarious, and I can't wait to tell 1,000 stories about them. So trust me, stay tuned, come back. You don't want to miss a week. But a little bit about me. First and foremost, I am a born and raised New Yorker. Yes, and I'm from the real New York, which if you're from New York, that really only means that you're not from upstate. No, shout out to the people who live upstate. Don't take offense to that. But my journey started actually in a place called Long Island. I was born in Freeport, New York, which is on Long Island. And my world, which you'll learn a whole lot more about, was spent with a daily connection to both Long Island and Brooklyn. And so Brooklyn was equally important to me and actually a huge part of my life and where I chose to spend some adult years as well. And so my East Coast roots, though, don't stop there. They go rather deep. I spent 33 years on the East Coast. After living in New York and always coming back, I actually also spent 13 long years in Philadelphia. Shout out to the city of brotherly love. And Philadelphia was amazing to me because what it gave me was a great career and those foundational years. I have 21 years of leadership experience. 18 of those were spent in finance. Do you believe that my first job was as a collections rep? Do you believe that my second job was a collections manager? And I don't mean like hi, you forgot to pay your car note like a week ago. Like we haven't gotten crap from you in like 4 months and I've got all of the codes to garnish your pay. I know. Like that was me. It was, I think it is also a reason that I have literally no filter on my lips these days. Like I get straight to the point. And so Philadelphia was amazing, but my story doesn't end there. I was afforded the opportunity back in 2013 to move to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 800 miles away, where I knew no one but Laverne and Shirley. And let me tell you how I spent 7 years with Milwaukee being my primary residence. Today, I'm actually splitting that time in Dallas, but I'll get to that in a second. Milwaukee gifted me so much. The biggest gift it gifted me was figuring out who Dee was. I knew who Deirdre was. I knew who Deirdre the vice president was and Deirdre the daughter and all those things, but I didn't know who Dee was. And I found her while living in Milwaukee. But the next best gift that it gave me was the love of my life, my husband of a little over a year now. In fact, Asi and I got married on New Year's Eve, 2019, right before COVID kicked us all in the ass. And my husband, if you know me, you know, is my happy place. And you know that wherever he is where I want to be. And there's no shame in my game about that. We love out loud because there's so much else in the world that's loud. And he is everything to me in that aspect. He gifted me with the second best love of my life. And that is our beloved Mason. And if you're watching this versus listening, you're seeing pictures, and you're probably falling in love with what is the cutest 10-year-old Vishla. Let me tell you, he is 50 pounds of lapdog, okay? And he curls up, literally, the best gift Asi gave me. One day I'll probably have to give him some real children, but stay tuned for that topic, because trust me, it's a hot topic in my friends and family zone. And so that is a bit about my background. What I will also tell you that Milwaukee gave me was the gift of entrepreneurship. It was during my time in Milwaukee that I started what most of you may know me as, which is the CEO and chief strategist of DC Global Group. DC Global Group is a boutique firm of experts who support organizations in uncovering their untapped potential, because everyone has untapped potential. We specifically, though, help individuals do that within unlocking their core. We also help companies do that by unlocking it within their culture and the leadership talent that they have. If you know me, you know my next best happy place to my family is being in a space facilitating, teaching, guiding, any place that's producing growth and authenticity and a little bit of nerdy research data, because what's knowledge without data, right? And so that is an introduction to myself, my background. Trust me, you are going to hear all the stories. You're going to hear about my mom, who still treats me like I'm 12, but I would have it no other way. She didn't have any other kids, so she doesn't have anyone else to harass but me. You're going to hear about my girlfriend circle, of which half of which you'll meet. And so all of that's phenomenal. I also introduced you to Coffee and Grace. What I now want to do, because our time is about to come to an end, is I want to make sure you know how to tune in every week, because I'm telling you, you're going to want to make sure that this is your scheduled dose of grace and pick me up every week. We will make sure that when you're done with us after 35 minutes, some weeks it may be less than that you will leave enlightened, entertained, and you will leave feeling soul touched. I promise you. So let me get into it. First and foremost, Coffee and Grace will be produced, drum roll please. Brrr. Thank you, Mr. Producer. Weekly. We are going to meet weekly. You didn't think I could come to you like once a month. Listen, I don't have those superpowers. Keeping this to 35 minutes is going to be the superpower, because if you know me, you know I can talk by myself. But I'm going to have guests every week. Every single week, you're going to meet someone new and have some new conversation. And so it is going to be phenomenal. I could give you some of the hints on the guest, but I'm just going to save it. Just don't miss a week. The topics are going to be everything from love and marriage to religion and faith, to in your house, who cleans the dishes, to what in the world are our freaking politicians doing today, to what I read on the way here. You name it. We're going to talk about it. The other exciting thing is that starting next month, this conversation is going to open up and not just be a one-way conversation. I didn't get into this just to introduce you to conversations. I also got into it to converse with you, because I want to know you. And so starting next month, Coffee and Grace is going to start to have live engagements. That makes me beyond thrilled. We're going to wait a month just because I want to know exactly when is the best time for you and I to sip together. How do you prefer that? And we'll find out what your favorite beverage is to sip on. Keep in mind, just because it's called Coffee and Grace doesn't mean that that's what you have to have in your cup. I do want you to have a cup, though, every time we get together. By the way, the coffee for Coffee and Grace, because some of you might say, well, why does it start with a K? There is a reason for that. If you look up the phonetic pronunciation for coffee, it actually is a K. And so there was a part of me seeking, being super deep, if I be completely honest, that was like, this is about stripping down to the bare of who we are so we can connect. And so I wanted to say, let's introduce the notion of coffee for what it was meant to be, because I believe it was meant to start with a K. It's also a K because my last name is Kendrix, and branding-wise, it's genius. So that is that. I will tell you that we will meet you next week. In fact, I'll give you a little tidbit. Next week, my first guest, I won't tell you who the guest is yet. We are going to talk about grace and marriage. More importantly, we're going to talk about what kind of grace is needed every day in marriage. If you're not married and just cohabitating, if you're thinking about living with someone, if you're ever thinking about romantically even being involved with another human being, you want to tune in, because trust me, grace is needed in cohabitating and sharing life with anyone, even if you only share life with them 2 days out of the week, which is not the case for us. But, in fact, I will tell you who the guest is. None other than my personal grace giver, my husband, Kendrix, is going to be our first guest. You are in for a treat because he is everything I'm not, and it's all hilarious. So don't miss that. Well, folks, I hope that you enjoyed our first episode. This really was just about me coming to say hello. It was about me letting you know that now you have a space, a new space for thoughtful connection in a new way and brave conversations that your other podcast may not be having. If you're watching this, you know that you have the option to watch. If you're listening, you know that you have the option to listen. But if you're doing one of those, you may not know that you have the option to do both, which is pretty cool. You can find us on every platform that you can find any other podcast, but I will tell you that at the end of this episode, there'll be a nifty page with all of our social media handles. We'll also guide you to our website every single week where you can find clips and full episodes and never miss a single drop of the coffee that we are dropping at this table. So with that, I'm going to prepare to close with our last sip. So, in future weeks, I'm going to ask that you always save a sip for the last sip so that this is the thing that separates us but keeps us connected until next time. And this week, it is going to be around the fact that, as I told you, I created this space so that we could empower, but mostly just be and have a space where people are able to hear conversations that are happening at their coffee table. I feel like there's so much conversation happening at people today on social media as opposed to amongst. And I feel like we're not even just having the basic conversations anymore that used to just grow us, and we would have at our aunt or our mentor or our uncle or our neighbor's kind of coffee table. And that's what I want. But I also wanted it to be so that we could connect to the premise of grace. Why? Because I think grace is the gift that we don't realize will save our lives and prolong our lives and help us do the same for others. And although we'll talk in weeks and months and years to come about all of the multi-layers of grace and how to leverage that muscle, what I do want you to do is start to intentionally say, how can I be more gracious? I have a favorite quote that I tend to say, and it is this: in all things that you do and in every engagement that you have with another human being, choose grace. And if you can't choose grace because that's too hard, at a minimum, choose compassion. If you can't choose either, just know that neither will choose you when it matters most. Thank you for joining us for this amazing first episode. I can't wait to meet you back at the table next week. Have a good one. Thank you for joining the conversation. It was such a privilege to have you. We hope that you would keep joining the conversations. Meet us over at our social media where there's always a Coffee and Grace conversation happening.